Did you just say you want an awesome set of speakers that ticks all the boxes, including looking cool as hell? Say no more. Well, hello there. Welcome to Bueno Reviews, where I review the things that I love. Today I'm going to be showing you one of my favorite things on my desk, the Klipsch Heritage Promedia 2.1. The Promedia Heritage 2.1 speaker system has 1-inch soft dome tweeters on Tractrix horns, a proprietary technology that has been the driving force behind the stunningly precise Klipsch acoustics. Each speaker also features a 3-inch long throw woofer for powerful dynamic mid-range detail. Then there's the best-in-class 8-inch sub. It exerts the deepest, most musical bass I have ever heard in desktop speakers, and trust me when I say you can feel it. It also has built-in Bluetooth connectivity, so you can get creative with how you can use this. And would you look at that, there's a remote. A remote I never used in the setup that I have, but I thought it was worth mentioning. Lastly, the looks. I love the way these speakers look. Klipsch wanted to pay homage to their Heritage line of speakers, which are notoriously some of the best speakers you can get on the market today. I also just might have a soft spot in my heart for anything mid-century modern. It comes in 2 flavors. The finish that I have is in walnut, but they also come in a black with amazing speaker covers. If I had my way, I'd have the walnut finish with the speaker covers that come with the black, but both look badass as far as I'm concerned. So when I first got these hooked up, the first thing I did was update the firmware. There's a video in the description below that'll show you how to do that. Don't worry, it's easy. Then it was time to hear what they can do. And man, I was blown away by the sound that came out of this system. The bass is rich and accurate, there is zero mud, and the clarity from the mid-woofer and tweeter on the desktop speakers blew me away. When you talk about instrument separation, these have it in spades. The sound is so wide and immersive that almost all you non-audiophile people out there will truly enjoy it. And I say non-audiophile because I feel like the only way to make those people happy is the setup that they've built themselves. So besides my usual Metallica, Yellow Wolf, Tears for Fears, Tribe Called Quest playlists that I throw at my speakers or headphones to test them out, hey, we all have our things, okay? I found a really cool playlist that actually has, I believe, like 10 tracks that test your speaker system or your headphones in specific ways. And in the article, they break down what the track is pushing your speakers to the limit of. You know, things like instrument separation, clarity, bass, a lot of cool technical things I had no idea I should even test out on speakers. There's also some really cool tracks on there, so I'm gonna leave a link for that in the description below. Be sure to check that out, regardless if you're gonna buy these or not. It's just a cool playlist. Good job, whoever you are. After listening to that playlist, I basically found out that I could throw pretty much anything I wanted at these, and they just kept blowing me away. They can also get way too loud if you want them to. A big part of the quality and sound is those Tractrix horns. The speakers are basically Honey, I Shrunk the Kids versions of the Klipsch Heritage speakers. Hersey? I'm not sure how you say it, but they're super expensive and they're super badass. Needless to say, I'm very, very happy. Also, I do edit a lot of video, and luckily these speakers have a pretty flat EQ depending on how much you crank your subwoofer up. So for me and my editing needs and basic sound mixing, they work absolutely fine as reference monitors. Now, if you're trying to master music or something like that, then yeah, you're probably gonna wanna get legit monitor speakers, but just letting you creators know out there, these will work totally fine and not give you a weird representation of what the sound is actually like. Also, before I forget, there is a setting in the speakers called auto on off, and the new firmware allows you to shut that off completely. And I would highly suggest you do that, because after about 15 or 20 seconds of the speakers not having any audio, or sometimes even low audio, they'll just shut off and go into standby mode. And then they pop back on. It's really annoying. So I'd highly suggest updating the firmware and turning that off if you pick up a set. And yes, there is a link to buy these speakers in the description below. And yes, I would really appreciate it if you used it. When I started redesigning my desk setup that you see behind me, the first set of speakers I actually got were the Klipsch Promedia THX certified 2.1 system. And for 120 bucks, those sounded awesome. Everything was crystal clear, it did have good instrument separation, and the bass was pretty damn good. But then, I don't know why or how, I stumbled on the Heritage version of the Promedia 2.1, and I fell in love with how they looked. I tried to talk myself out of it for the next few days, and I just couldn't stop thinking about them. Whenever that happens, I'm doomed, and here they are. So in comparison, the Heritage definitely sound better than the THX certified Promedia system that I had prior. But it's not by a tremendous margin. I'd say the biggest step up is the subwoofer. The bass is a lot cleaner in the Heritage system. Also, I mentioned it before, but the instrument separation is a lot better in the Heritage line as well. Lastly, the Heritage system just fills the room more, and not just by volume, but by width. I mentioned it before, but these really are extremely immersive, and the soundstage is just so wide. I don't know what kind of black magic voodoo goblins are inside, but whatever they're doing, I'm all for it. That said, when comparing the two, if the Promedia THX 2.1 is all you can afford in your budget, I would still highly recommend picking up a set of those. So, after I got everything set up and I was in love with the sound and I was in love with the look and I was just like, oh, I'm so happy, there was a problem, and it was a pretty big one. Everything was going great. I was playing a ton of music. I was watching different movie scenes. I was playing soundtracks from all kinds of movies. And then I was sitting at my desk with nothing playing when I discovered a hiss, and it sucked. So when I say hiss, I mean there is an audible sss that doesn't change when you turn up or down the volume. And I immediately started researching online because I didn't see many reviews on this system, which is one of the reasons why I'm making this video. And I didn't hear anyone mention hiss. So I'm going online, I'm going on Reddit, and sure enough, there are plenty of other people that also have a hiss issue. So the first thing I did was what others claimed solved the problem, which is upgrade the 3.5mm to RCA cable. The one that it comes with, yeah, it's pretty flimsy. So I went on Amazon, I bought a really nice one, nothing. Hiss did not change at all. Now, I am listening to them near field because they're right in front of me. Like, they're probably a foot or 2 feet away from me. If they were on a bookshelf or, you know, farther away, like in a living room or something for a vinyl setup, I don't think the hiss would be a big issue. But if you're sitting right in front of it like I am, it was driving me nuts. I couldn't deal with it. So after trying many solutions, including the cable that I mentioned, and making sure it was getting a proper ground, I was plugging it into its own outlet, I was using different power strips, different power banks, nothing. The hiss was not going away. It wasn't even changing at all. And then I found this, the Fosi Audio BT20A Pro amp for $100 on Amazon. At this point, I'd already fallen in love with them, so I was dedicated to making them work. So I had to buy the Fosi. So there goes another $100. And while I was at it buying the Fosi, I decided to buy a passive volume knob for the subwoofer as well. I could have adjusted the subwoofer with the remote, but I didn't want to have to deal with that. So in terms of setup, I'm taking the 3.5mm audio out from my laptop, or really from my monitor, because my laptop is hooked up to my Acer with one USB cable. The Acer has a 3.5mm out. So I'm taking the audio out from the Acer into the Fosi. Then I'm taking the Fosi and I'm using a little 3.5mm shorty cable and connecting that to the volume knob. And then from the volume knob, I'm taking another 3.5mm to RCA cable to the back of the inputs on the subwoofer. And you can see on the subwoofer itself is where the stock amp is built in. That's the culprit of the hiss. Then all I had to do was hook up these speakers directly to the Fosi. So essentially the Fosi now is the amp that's powering my speakers on the desk, and the sub is being powered by itself, getting the signal from the Fosi line out. Is that confusing enough? If you guys have any questions on how to hook this up, if you have one, please do not hesitate to ask me questions in the comments. Also, I like the way the Fosi looks on my desk. It's all metal body and metal knobs just look really good, especially that pop of orange on the volume knob. Also, after getting it hooked up, I keep the Fosi pretty much at 0 and 0 on the treble and bass. I don't adjust those at all because I like the EQ where it's at from the factory, and I didn't want to add any extra oomph to the EQ. So after I got all that hooked up, thank God, hiss was gone. And they actually sound even better. Not a huge upgrade, but the Fosi does up the clarity a little bit more, and it just sounds, it sounds so good. Now to be clear, if I never had the hiss problem, I wouldn't have done any of this. I would have just ran the system stock and been happy. But now I have an easy way to control the level of my subwoofer. Unfortunately, with the Heritage Promedia system, you don't get any manual controls on the speakers themselves. They're all in the back of the subwoofer. That can be a little cumbersome, which is why they give you a remote, but to me, I'm not a huge remote at my computer kind of guy. So problem 1 solved. Then there was another problem, but it wasn't nearly as big of a deal, and that's adjusting audio. I have an M1 MacBook, and I think this is probably gonna be true for any MacBook, but I could be wrong about that. If you have your MacBook hooked up to a speaker system via the 3.5mm output. Yeah, scratch that. I meant to say when you get audio out via USB, not 3.5. Now back to you, me. You can't control the volume like you normally can with your system volume with the keyboard shortcuts. You know, the built-in volume up and down on your keyboard doesn't work. You hit the button and it's like, hey, I'm not here anymore. That bummed me out because that's the most convenient way to adjust volume for me. Luckily, the fix for this was way easier than the hiss problem, and it didn't cost me anything. It's a free app called EQ Mac. It basically creates a virtual output in your system settings and boom, keyboard audio adjustment works. There's also a pretty decent equalizer in EQ Mac if you want to mess with that. And there's some cool spatial settings as well. I highly suggest checking it out. So after all this, is it worth it? If you love the mid-century modern look and you want some of the best bang for buck sound you can get in the market, there really isn't much else like the Heritage 2.1 Promedia system from Klipsch. Sure, you can go down the rabbit hole putting together your own 2.1 speaker system by selecting your own shelf speakers, your own subwoofer, your own amp, but I just didn't want to deal with that. I also tried the Edifier R1280 because those were also highly recommended and did have somewhat of a similar look, but when I plugged them in and listened to them for the first time, they just really didn't blow me away like these did. Now, if the look isn't super important to you and you just want a solid 2.1 speaker system, like I said before, I would highly recommend the regular Promedia THX certified 2.1 system by Klipsch. But if you want some of the coolest looking speakers for your desk or your shelf that deliver top-notch immersive sound with a subwoofer that punches way above its class in a pre-built package, there's really nothing else like this. And that's it, another review on a product I love. I hope I was able to answer some questions you had or shed some light on a product you never even know existed. As always, if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. And until next time, have a good one.